Hey folks, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be talking about GraphQL, how we are using GraphQL in today's modern web application development, how it has become an ubiquitous tool for building APIs today. As we know, today apps are getting updated every day. We are adding a lot of new features, building beautiful UI interfaces, and how we can use the power of GraphQL to facilitate the modern rapid application development that we are following today. So I'm no expert in GraphQL, and I started my learning journey around 3 months back and kind of broke the myths around it. And this tweet inspired me to put this video on public. So this tweet is from Swix. I've added a link to this tweet in my YouTube video. Basically it talks about learning in public. So how we as we all know, as engineers, we consume a lot of content over web, and we learn in private and lurk, and we don't create enough by ourselves. Basically we don't speak in public about it, and we tend to learn them and forget them after a few months, and if we don't get a chance to apply them in real world, we almost forget them, and all the hours that have been put in learning them is going to waste. Uh, so we want to avoid it. So this tweet has inspired me, and I'll not go through this tweet completely in my video, and I have put a link in my YouTube video description. So I'll move to the GraphQL. What exactly is it? So GraphQL, as you know, it's just a specification. The specification has been put here. As you can see, this is a specification. It talks about the rules the query language needs to follow, and the validation rules, the tokens, the semantics, everything has been put in the specification. So it's a, it's just a specification. It defines formal language for queries. Again, formal language is different from natural language. It has its boundaries. It has its own syntax, the semantics, the tokens, everything. So this formal language is defined in this specification for querying. It defines the rules for defining your schema in your application. It defines rules for how to query your data. It defines rules for how do you validate these queries against this schema that you have defined in your system. It defines rules for executing the query against the schema. So all these rules are being put in the specification, and anyone is free to implement the specification in his or own favorite language. So this specification was put by Facebook earlier. In 2012, the mobile users were growing exponentially in Facebook, and their model of using the web UI in mobile was kind of a disaster for them. So they have, especially for the news feed, as we know, news feed, we show a bunch of different things to the users. The growing list of things people have published, friends have published, and the whatever your pages that you're following are published has to be put in this news feed, and you have to show the recent activities of your friends who are active, everything. So this involves a lot of network calls basically, and the Facebook was trying to solve this problem in 2012. They kind of developed this specification. Lee Bryan comes up with a bunch of team and develop its specification. And interestingly, even Netflix and Coursera will also be facing this problem. Coursera kind of drops their problem solving when Facebook open sources GraphQL in 2015. However, Netflix publishes something called Falcor. I'll be talking about them maybe in the next upcoming videos. But GraphQL gets open sourced in 2015, and the community grows. We build a lot of tools around it, and in 2018, the GraphQL project gets moved out of Facebook, and it gets its own foundation called GraphQL Foundation under Linux. This is kind of a brief history around it. There is a very nice YouTube video on the history of GraphQL. I've put that in my YouTube video description. You can refer it. It's a very good video to watch. Now, as we all know, we have to, most of us are following REST APIs for our web application development. And why is GraphQL needed? Basically, in simple terms, let's consider a system which gives the users details and what is the membership. Let's say you have a system where users get subscribed to it, and I want to see this data, what the list of users and their corresponding plans or the subscription plans. So in if you think about REST APIs, let's say we have uh, three different interfaces in mobile, desktop, and tablet, and depending on the interfaces, we may need to show some data or write some data. First, we retrieve the users from one REST API if we are following the REST API standards. Then we hit users. When then we retrieve the ID from these responses. Basically, we parse this data, retrieve the IDs. Then we make a call individually. Uh, this we hit this API to get the subscription plan for each user, and then we parse the results, and then we show it to the users back. And we might be fetching this from any database or any other downstream services. So as we all know, we are making a lot of network round trip requests here, but in GraphQL we make a single query to this. We fetch whatever is required. For example, in mobile you might query just the first name and the settings, membership and plan. In desktop you might retrieve all the data, the first name, last name, the membership plans around it. But this is just one single request that you are making to the server, and any GraphQL server hosts a single endpoint only called slash GraphQL. Only your query changes to this endpoint. There is no need to go back to your backend team, ask for the API, and you know today in our application development, a lot of time is being wasted just for this communication back and forth, like what the data is exposed by the backend, which APIs to call, what is the orchestration that you need in the front end. So a lot of time is spent on discussing these things and arriving at conclusion, and sometimes you know let's go over the rest overheads basically. As I said, the classic waterfall request between client and server, which causes network overhead in the REST API, and versioning API. Basically, when you need a new feature, sometimes in REST, you develop a new version altogether just to support the backward compatibility, and this has become an overhead now because it requires deploying both these applications, development of both these applications, and uh, we sometimes build these orchestration APIs and bulk REST APIs to support these features. Uh, and developers spend more time discussing the contracts, the JSON contracts that the API returns. Developers spend more time in data validations, data massaging, and orchestration of it. Especially front-end engineers, that the REST API returns a lot of data that we do not need to show to the users. We spend time in just parsing these data, extracting the required information, and sometimes orchestration of different APIs, basically calling them parallelly, so that it adds a lot of development efforts here. And with these things, user experience becomes an aftermath, because the problem of orchestration and everything kind of puts user experience and makes user experience an afterthought, like, because we tend to say that, hey, let's just build the minimum viable product and let's care about the experience later, care about the customer perceived latency later. So this should be avoided. The GraphQL solves these problems. We don't overfetch or underfetch the data. Basically, the client dictates the data that it needs, and the waterfall network request can be eliminated because there is only a single endpoint and you query what is required here. Less computation on the client device. Basically, you don't parse these data, you don't manipulate, there is no orchestration here. So kind of less computation. Think about lower end devices, where we kind of where we can't use the power processing them. And then schema becomes the single source of truth, so we don't need to go back to the backend engineers every time. The schema will become a single source of truth, and it can be accessible anytime. Just hit the slash GraphQL and refer the schema document. There you will know what are all the responses that the system exposes. We can even stitch those schemas. Let's say you have two or three microservices. You can build a single GraphQL server that kind of stitches both these schema that are written by these two applications. No versioning of APIs, and GraphQL is a growing ecosystem. We have Apollo, Relay, everything that are kind of easing the development experience for the developers. And why? So why is it called GraphQL? Uh, why the word graph? For this, I have my handwritten note. Mm. So as we all know, graph is kind of a set of interconnected nodes. These can be called as entities or nodes or vertex, and the interconnection between them can be called as links or the relationship or edges. We all know there are few types of graphs. There are cyclic graphs, acyclic directed graphs. Directed graphs is something you can travel from start to end based on the direction of the edge. And acyclic directed graphs are also called as trees. You can traverse these trees using the direction of the edge. For example, I can start at root node, I can go to the first name in this direction, and parsing the trees becomes easier. Basically, read and write operations are easier on a tree, and we can traverse the entire tree by starting at the root node. We have different algorithms, PFS, DFS, that we can apply. So modeling with GraphQL. So how your system can use this power of graphs. For example, your entire schema can be called as a business domain. Schema is nothing but multiple fields, and in GraphQL, every field will have its own resolver. So let's consider a system. Let's say your system exposes the user data and the whatever the membership he has been subscribed to. So this is your entire schema in the application. It returns the user information, what is first name, last name, and the membership, the start date and end date of the membership. Now each thing here is called fields. First name is a field, last name is field, settings is a field, and settings has its own subfields called membership. Membership again has its subfield called start date and end date. And in a tree, as you know, these are called root nodes, and the end nodes, the basically the nodes which does not have any child, are called leaf nodes. So every field will have its own resolver function. First name will have its own resolver function that returns the first name of the user. Last name will have its own resolver function which returns the last name for the user. And fields are divided as scalar and subfields. As I said, these things, the leaf nodes become the scalar fields, and the ones that has its own child nodes becomes the subfields. Now, a query in the graph is nothing but a path in the graph. Let's say you query for first name. This becomes just a path, user to first name. If you query for last name, if you start with the root node called user and you go to last name field. This is nothing but just a path. So when you query different things in your data, it's nothing but you are just doing a tree traversal here, and you basically you construct the result by merging the result of resolver functions for every field extracted from schema. So basically, when you query for data, GraphQL server parses the schema document at execution time. It forms a dictionary called type map. Execution algorithm looks for this document to resolve queries. So basically, as I said, for this schema, it forms this kind of a type map or a dictionary. Basically, a dictionary called type map. It says what are the fields, and it also points to the resolver function of that field. For example, here user exposes different has its own fields called last name and settings, and the resolver function reference is there in the same dictionary. Now again, settings has its own subfield, so settings gets its own uh, place here in the type map, and it has its reference to the resolver function here. Basically, when you query for the data, you retrieve the type, you run its resolver function, and if it happens to have other subfields, repeat the same. You retrieve the type, run its resolver function, and basically you repeat it if it happens to have further different fields, and at the end you just merge these results and return that. As we all know, basically when you send out a query, we parse this query, we form an abstract syntax tree, we check for the syntaxes, and then the query is converted to an abstract syntax tree, and then the execution algorithm takes over. I put a link which explains this beautifully in the video description. You can refer it. Now, as we all know, in REST APIs, we have uh, four different HTTP operations. For example, if you need something from the REST API, you ask for it using GET method. If you want to post something, basically, let's say you want to create a user, you create it using a post endpoint. If you want to update, there is always put or patch, and then for deleting, you follow delete. Similarly, in GraphQL, everything becomes a query. If you want to get anything, you query it, and the rest all things, like if you want to create resource, update a resource, or delete a resource, you use something called mutation. I'll be talking about them in my next slides. Basically, there are only two operations, query and mutations. Query is nothing but just a way to retrieve the data. Basically, it kind of becomes the get operation. All these post, put, and patch becomes mutations in GraphQL. Now, what are the different concepts in GraphQL? There are types, schema, queries, mutation, subscription, fragments, areas, and arguments. These are some of the terms you hear in GraphQL frequently. I'll be talking about each of them in my demo video. So let's learn in Playground. Basically, I'll be using the GitHub API Explorer to teach these concepts. As you know, there is this developer.github.com/v4explorer. This is a GraphQL endpoint exposed by GitHub. And when I say let's learn about the first concept called types. Now, if you refer, this is called as GraphQL Playground. So if you want to develop anything over this GitHub, you can always use this GraphQL Explorer or the GraphQL Playground. So you can see there are two root types, query and mutation. And what are the different types of query you can run on this GraphQL endpoint. So let's say, now let's come to the types. Now, as we all know, this is a query, code of conduct, and code of conduct returns some result with the type called code of conduct. Now, if I click on the code of conduct, this is nothing but an object. So it returns the body, which is a string. This is again a type, and ID. Key is a string, name is string, ID is its own type called ID. Resource path is an URI, and again, if you click on URI, you'll see what exactly it is. It's nothing but a string, but it's basically an RFC compliant string. These are something called as types. Your query is a type, your mutation is a type, and your entire thing that basically this document is called a schema document for this GraphQL, GitHub GraphQL API. Schema document conducts what are the things that you can query for, what are the types it returns, what is the result type it returns. Everything is put in schema. Now let's come to queries. Now, how we can use the power of queries here. Now, for the sake of video, to save my time, I have put them in the notepad here. As you can see, I can search for repository query. This returns result of type repository, and this query takes two arguments, name and owner, which are required, which are, if you see an exclamation mark next to the type, that means it's a required field. Basically, when you are querying this, these things are definitely required, and returns something of type called repository, and that repository of type consists of further subfields. Now I just want the ID, the name of the repository, the URL of the repository. So let's hit this query. You can see this play button. As you can see, it returns the repository details, whatever the fields that I asked for. As you know, the query structure also matches the result structure. The data becomes a root field in the result, and it follows the same structure that I queried for. It returns the ID, what is the created at time, name, and name of the repository, the URL of the repository. And if I press control space here, it gives me what are the things that this API returns. Now let's say I want to see the default branch reference. I think this has its own subfields, so I need to query those subfields. Basically, you can't query the field as it is if it contains subfields. The path, as you saw in my earlier tree structure, you need to query for the leaf node. So I'll query the name. So the default branch here is master for this repository. So this is something called as query. Next, let's go to the for the different concepts like alias. So I'll be talking about what are alias and what are fragments here. Now, as you can see, I'm querying two different repository results here. One is called JS guests and another one is called email. In REST API, you might have to hit two different. Basically, you will hit the same APIs but twice with different arguments. But in GraphQL, you can leverage the power of graphs here, and this is something called alias. So for the first query, I'm putting an alias called JSGuest. For the second one, I'm putting an alias called emaily. And then this is something called as fragment. For basically for the uh, I'm creating a fragment. Basically, my result structure is same. I need ID, name, URL, and created at time for both of these things. So instead of repeating these things in my query, I can form a fragment on the type. So repository, this, as you know, in my previously I explained how repository returns a type called repository. So I am forming a fragment called repo info on this type, and I'm putting the fields that are required here, and I'm using these fragment here. So instead of me repeating these fields in my two queries, I'll just create a fragment and use this here. So I'll hit this. As you can see, the result contains the alias that I've put in my query, and it returns the results. Now coming to the variables part. So again, I'll use the same thing. Okay. Okay. So I'm having some trouble copying them. Cool. Yeah. As you can see here, the query takes three arguments: owner, name, the first name, basically the name of my first repository, and the name 2 becomes the name of my second repository, which I'm passing in the query variables here. So the result remains. This is something called as variables or query variables. The next thing I'll come to is called mutation. As I said, mutation are used for creating a resource or updating the resource or deleting the resource. So in my example, I'll be creating a repo. repository in my GitHub, and I'm passing some inputs here. Yeah. So this mutation takes an argument called input, and the input has to follow the type called create repository input, which has the required fields like name, the visibility, repository visibility is again an enum, which is private, public, or internal. So in my input, I'm passing the visibility as public, and let me put the name is GraphQL Playground sample, and see, I am creating the repository, and I want these results to be written by what is the name of the repository, the name with owner, ID, created at, what is the total number of pull requests, the URL of the repository. So it created a repository in my GitHub with this name and name with owner, created at time, and the URL of the repository. Now let's say I if I hit this endpoint. Interesting. Okay, there is a double quote. Cool. See, as you know, it created a repository in my GitHub. I'll be talking about subscriptions in my later videos. Basically, I'll be building a GraphQL server in my next video. I'll be talking about this concept of subscription over there. So this is it, and these are some of the resources that I referred for creating these videos. I'll be putting them in my description below. Thank you.